TV party tonight. Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch. Alright! Tonight! We got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't wanna know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is Jessica Jones, Season 2. And I am not alone tonight. Of course, let me tell you who I am. I am your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And like I said, I am not alone on the couch. Here, hanging out with me on the couch, watching the TV that isn't plugged in, trying to check out our favorite show. My good friend and the host of Damn You Hollywood, the man screaming no, 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 no at the critics. He is Robert Winfrey. How do you do, sir?
I really, really hate you for making me review this.
Oh, we're off to a roaring start. And since you're the one that told me before we went on tonight that you don't want to be here all night, in 50 words or less, why do you hate me for making you review this?
Well, it's less this and more everything.
Hang on 1 second. Yes, Jonas, how can I help you?
My butt was itching.
Your butt's itchy?
Yes! Yes!
You know, you're telling the world right now that's listening to this podcast that your butt's itchy. Do you know that? Oh, yes.
Yeah, but...
Man, I wish...
Why don't you tell your mom that your butt itches? Maybe you should do this somewhere not near my microphone.
No, I told her at the playground.
Oh, you told Mommy at the playground that your butt itches, and several hours later it still itches? That's good parenting.
Man, you need to introduce me so I can get in here and say something at least.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a parent that's mortified by these entire proceedings, Mr. Jesse Starcher.
I didn't take a bath.
Daddy, my butt itches.
Daddy, I've forgotten how to podcast, Daddy. Daddy, change my underwear. I've only got one pair.
That's probably one of the most classic kid moments on this podcast I've ever heard.
I'm going to die childless and alone, and I'm going to be happy.
There's reason number 345.
Why is he melting into your thigh?
I don't know. I want to be like what Willie does.
Okay, take your jeans off.
Oh, so Willie does...
So I need to pause my podcast until this clears out.
Mommy?
Clear the studio. For God's sakes, keep your pants on.
I'm never going to be able to top Itchy Butt, Jonas. Ever.
No, your kids have one unifying complaint: the internet. The damn internet won't work.
The Wi-Fi, Dad. What happened to the internet?
Daddy, I cannot sleep without the Wi-Fi.
What happened to my Hulu? Daddy.
All right. That is Jesse Starcher, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, sir?
Oh my goodness! You know what I find funny is that you are not going to be able to curse. All right, and
no tonight. No. Hang on. I can fucking curse all I want tonight.
Oh, you can curse all you want here.
Yeah.
But the point is that on Damn You Hollywood, you're not going to be able to curse, and the title of the show has a curse word in it. I hope and pray that the first show you drop on there, they'll be like, wait a second, we did not agree to this.
I'm taking a moral stance. I'm not changing the title of my show.
I not blame you.
No, the show will forever be Damn You Hollywood. It'll just be Damn You Hollywood with me not cursing every other word. However, this is fucking TV party tonight, so I'm going to curse all I want because I'm not posting this in the Movie Pass group. How do you like them apples? All right. People say we don't ever get to the point fast enough, so let's get to the point. Jessica Jones dropped on March 8th, a fresh new 13 episodes. Fresh off The Defenders, fresh off of Season 1, and the death of Kilgrave, we rejoin Jessica Jones. And this season, the theme around it was mothers and daughters. This was the great search for Jessica Jones's origin. How did she become superpowered? What happened? What really happened to her family? This is the central mystery that pushes it forward. There were a lot of comments, complaints, reviews that focused on the fact that there wasn't really a strong villain this season that propelled it forward. Instead, what you had was a mystery that was propelling it, and then the relationship between the discovered mother, who wasn't really dead, and Jessica Jones. And some lesser plot lines, which we'll get into, is the slow burn towards Patsy evolving into Hellcat, and then the side plot of Jerry Hogarth and her...
Seriously. It's the misanthropic lesbian adventures of Carrie-Anne Moss. That's all it is.
Terrific. Her medical subplot, which somewhat intertwines with what's going on, and then other times it doesn't. No. All right, so let me start... Let's just call a spade and start right off with where we all stand here. Jesse, you had said offline, and so let's get right to it. You were not a huge fan of this season. I'm going to ask you straight up: Did this not tickle your particular bag? Was this not your particular brand of vodka, or did you feel craft-wise that this just was not as well done as the first season of Jessica Jones?
I'll go with both. The one thing I had the hardest time trying to understand is the appeal of this season. Okay, I try not to be the negative Nancy. That's my deal. I do my best to be as positive as I can, especially when it comes to a comic book that's brought to the small screen. And we've all loved what we've seen that Netflix has done with these Marvel properties. But okay, there's that.
Ups and downs.
I'm there because now I'm not a fan of this. This is the worst season, in my opinion, of the Netflix series that's come out, of all of them.
Why do you
it's
hate,
bottom of the barrel.
Why do you hate women?
I'd agree with that.
Now,
because that's the counter argument to saying it sucks.
I will tell you that I asked my wife. I said, "What did you think of this season?" Because I absolutely hated it. At the end of the last episode, I got up from my couch and I said, "Here, Caleb, here's the controller. Go play your video games. I'm glad this is over." Because
I was so waiting to see. At the end of the season, I got up, I stretched, I looked around, I pulled out a gun and shot my television.
Nothing that extreme, but I remember asking my wife. I said, "Did you like this season?" Because I was worried that maybe it's something that personally I have to get through to try to understand why I didn't like it. And she said it was okay. So it wasn't like she had the abject distaste that I did for it. So there you go. Is it my personal bag? That's obviously a no, because my wife enjoyed it. I did not. Now, as for when it comes to craft, I really honestly think that this show was predictable as all get out. And my goodness, you said lacking a villain. Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to pick a bad villain when you hate the hero almost as much as you hate the actual villain that's supposed to be there. And then just to make things more confusing, they try to play the sympathy card for the actual villain, and you kind of get a little bit of that. That's done well in some shows. It wasn't done well here, because I could have gave a shit less about who was, and I knew what was going to happen at the end, although I didn't know specifically who was going to be pulling the trigger at the end. I just didn't. I knew exactly 3 episodes before everything happened where we were going to end up. That's not the sign of a good told tale.
I'd minorly contest the end there, because I pretty much called Luke Cage beat for beat 2 episodes in, and it's still an exceptionally well-made
Okay.
Television season.
I want to come back to you because I want to delve a little bit more into your personal taste and why it didn't tickle your bag specifically. But let me go over to Winfrey real quick just to make everyone get their fair share. We can move this along. What's your problem, dude? No.
A lot of things.
Why don't you like
Where do you
Ministry?
wanna start?
Be good, Jesse. People leave comments now. Be nice.
All right. To be fair, I don't care much for Ministry either. So
Okay.
Terrific. You can find him on Winfrey on @Winfrey MMA, folks, on Twitter.
you can't.
They'll find you. We're passionate.
So, okay, give the same question to you. Did you feel slightly varied? Did you feel like the problem with this season was more of it didn't tickle your bag, or did you feel like they were just craft issues? It didn't matter whether or not it wasn't your particular brand of vodka. Sorry, your particular brand of iced tea.
I don't drink that either. We're
Fuck
not big on
off.
tea in the. We're not big on tea in the LDS culture. What do you want to say?
What do you drink? What do you Mormons like to drink? Your alien culture.
I'm going to let you figure that out. It's more amusing to watch you flail than it is to actually provide you with answers.
The entire podcast, I'm going to keep asking you what particular brand of X you like. I'm just know that now.
Just keep making assumptions on what he does drink. I think that's more fun.
That might also lead to some hilarity. To answer the question, I'm going to kind of agree with Jesse and say there's both. I mean, let me be... How do I say this? It's one thing... with season 1, just so everyone kind of can get a feel for where I might be headed with this. When you and I reviewed season 1, Mark, and for anyone curious as to what we thought about that, we were both very complimentary, and you can find the review in the archives. I think it's over on Blog Talk. I don't know if that show made the transition with us, but the first season of Jessica Jones didn't speak to me personally. That didn't stop it from being well made. That didn't stop the acting from being good, from the arcs from being compelling, et cetera, et cetera. This one, not only does it not appeal to me personally, it develops all kinds of narrative issues, and some of this goes towards and this is weird because I've talked in the past about how much authorial intent matters. It's not a whole lot, but there's a real weird tone that kind of has pervaded this particular season. It's one thing for it not to appeal to me. It's another thing for me to feel involuntarily excluded from any attempt at this, okay, because you are you, nothing about this is going to appeal to you, which is fair. It doesn't have to appeal to me. Not everything does. And it's also going to have all these issues. Well, then I'm going to say you have all these issues. Oh, and by the way, you're also this feels like it was written by everyone involved from the first season who happened to hear all of the praise and then form just a mutual admiration society. It's a bunch of pandering and glad handing. There's such little artistic merit. There's such little narrative cohesion.
And for more pandering and glad handing, check out our review of A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, which was also chock full of that.
Let me tell you where I stand, okay? Now that we've established where you guys stand, let me tell you where I stand on this, and then we can proceed daintily. I enjoyed this season. All right, everyone act shocked. Now, here's the thing. I, early on, divorced any notions that I was watching a superhero show from my mind while watching this. To me, this wasn't about a comic book character. This wasn't a superhero show in the way that Iron Fist was. Iron Fist, for all that's good about it or all that's negative about it, was definitely about a comic book character and his adventures therein. Same thing with Daredevil, to be honest with you. Those are very, very comic booky, and I think that's where there's a lot of appeal. if you look at like the Punisher show that we talked about for what seemed like 12 hours.
To be fair, we could have talked about it for 12 hours and I would have been perfectly happy.
Yes, the Punisher is a comic book character, but the show felt. I said it at the time. The show felt there was more going on than this comic book character. This show spoke to mental illness. It spoke to societal issues. Plus, there was a mystery going on. Plus, there was this, that, and the other thing. So that's where I feel like Jessica Jones finds its strength, is that the writers don't concern themselves with trying to appeal to comic book fans or to what they think comic book fans might like. Instead, they have this character, and she's...
So they pander to women?
Well, you call it pandering. I
call it pandering. I didn't call it pandering in the first season. I call this pandering.
I would tell you that they are writing to a point of view. They are writing about a broken character and how she would interact with the world around her given a certain set of circumstances. So last season was very much about rape culture and PTSD and all of that.
Don't say rape culture. We don't have one in the United States. The statistics around that are so completely and comically overblown.
Okay, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, though, and that you can't write a story about it, which is what I feel like a lot of Jessica Jones was.
Sure, how about you set it in the Sudan, where that's a serious problem.
Okay, if I could get through this.
No, I'm going to keep interrupting you on these points.
Okay, fine.
This is what you signed up for.
I don't have a mute button.
You do not.
But to get to the end of this, I felt like they started with an idea on a blackboard. Let's write a season that focuses on the relationship between a mother and a daughter. Now, the mother is broken and crazy and back from the dead, and the daughter is broken and crazy and has nearly died. How would they interact? What would that story be about? What would that say to the greater relationship, the greater motif of mothers and daughters? And while I get that that probably doesn't appeal to you guys, weirdly it appealed to me. Not necessarily because of mother and daughter specifically, but because of relationships. I liked that more so than anything. This wasn't about a superpowered being fighting a super villain. This was about how do these broken people find a way back to each other, and how does that affect the people around them? Which may not be compelling to some, but I wanted to see where it was going and what they would do with it. I was saying to Robert before we started tonight. First of all, Jesse, does that make sense to you? Do you see where I'm at now?
Yeah, I do. I think the one thing that stuck out to me most is how you said removing yourself from the understanding that this is not a Marvel, divorcing yourself from believing it's a Marvel superhero show. So that might actually be the reason why I don't like it, because you need to do too much of that in order to try and kind of, I guess, get more into this show. But then again, why put the Marvel banner on it? But go ahead.
Because it's a Marvel property.
Well, yeah, but you could tell. I could say this, and you could put this for any show, though. But regardless, you throw the Marvel banner in front of your show so you get Marvel fans to watch it. Now, don't get upset because I'm saying we're an exclusive club or anything like that. I'm just saying, tell a story that makes a comic book reader more interested in what's going on.
But why pigeonhole? Let's have that debate for just a minute.
Sure.
Why does a comic book show have to appeal to comic book fans? Why can't it appeal to an entirely different group of people?
It doesn't have to. Okay? And there's probably where my personal issue comes in, where I say, okay, give me something that makes this feel like a Marvel property. Instead, what they did is they said, we're not going to really give you much to make this feel like a Marvel. I thought Luke Cage was going to be in this season. Disappointed. What we got the Whizzer. You want to know something? I was excited when I saw the Whizzer. Because guess what? I'm a Marvel fanboy. And he lasts an episode or two. I can't even remember.
Wait. That's actually based on a character? That wasn't just something they cooked up in the... Wow.
Yes, sir. The Whizzer is an actual character. Now,
I was not aware of that.
That is stuff that excites me about watching shows that tie into the Marvel Universe. But, when I got to sit here and see, 9 hours of Jerry Hogarth trying to figure out, should I... It just was not appealing to me in any way. Does it have to be? There's you know the answer to that, Mark. It doesn't have to be. So this could very well be Netflix and Marvel saying, hey, guys, we have something else for you out here just under the Marvel umbrella. That's not a bad thing. It's just, my bag is untickled.
Okay. So let's focus on... let's talk about some individual characters and performances here, okay? We're not going to do an episode-by-episode breakdown. The guys and I talked about it before the show. We just decided that we'd be here for hours just trying to unpack it all, number one. Number two, a lot of the episodes did blend together, so we thought a better approach would be just to discuss performances, themes, etc. Let's start with Krysten Ritter, Jessica Jones herself. Robert, what did you... Now, we didn't have a problem with Krysten Ritter in the first season. What did you think of Krysten Ritter's continued performance this season? Did you think they did anything interesting with her character? What are some of your thoughts here vis-a-vis performance?
Nah, I got no problems with her. And I know that puts me sorry, that references things that are utterly immaterial. I did not have a problem with her performance in this season. I think there's issues of writing. I think the material she's given to work with is weaker. And I think that lends itself to the overall feel of the show, but I do not believe she...
Well, let's press on that a little bit, because I think that goes into performance in a way. So... what specifically can you point to and say that's weaker material that detracts from the performance?
Anything where she interacts with her adopted mother, is just, and there's a lot. I don't know if there's more of that or if there's just more of that character in this season, but either way, it's like all they wanted to do was create a villainous stage mom, which is fine. That they're mostly horrible people. And they crafted a character that was horrible. You've also established in this world that Jessica has a very low tolerance for horrible people. If she can't find something good about them, yet she is continually interacting with this woman who is narcissistic to the extreme.
Now, you're talking about her adoptive mother, not the monster, not her biological monster mom.
I have serious issues with the lack of consistency surrounding her interactions with her monstrous mother. And I understand that some of that's to be expected. Like, you are not the same person when you interact with your parents, especially given some of the things that go on around her. Like, there's going to be change. There's going to be change in perspective. I'm fine with that. The fact that and in this instance, I blame entirely the writing. Maybe the show running, the directing too, because you don't actually get a lot of the transitory period from Jessica Jones about a lot of this stuff. It's, no, I can't possibly forgive you because I'm now acting like an adolescent teenager and we say crap like this all the time. To, yeah, but no, I need a better idea because now there's the issue of, well, no, you're kind of my mom and I don't want you to be locked on the raft, especially since Cap already staged his breakout. Now there's no hope of getting out. Again, there's just a lot of inconsistencies around that. And some of that tweaks me personally because I don't mind, because there's certain, ideals and perspectives that she claims to hold to and then doesn't when they no longer suit her, and that level of hypocrisy bothers me. It doesn't bother me as much if it's character growth, and I think the real problem with a lot of this was you didn't actually get to see as much of her character's growth, in large part because they shoehorned is the wrong word. They condensed all of the time that she should have been able to express that and grow and let the show breathe around it into the last 4 episodes, which is a much bigger problem than ending someplace differently than you start.
Jesse, one of the things you had said offline, which I want to draw attention to, and it goes to what Robert is saying, is you had a difficult time with not necessarily Krysten Ritter, but the Jessica Jones character as she is written, because she is not somebody that you want to root for. You want to expound upon that?
Yeah. Let me say that performance-wise, I would say Krysten Ritter did a fantabulous job when she was probably directed to turn the bitch up to 11, because that's what she had to do. You know, she's a person that doesn't trust anybody. Jessica Jones is, as we've said, broken and snarky, and just so. I would probably distance myself from this person as far as I could if this was somebody I ran into in real life. God forbid if it was somebody I had to work with. Okay? Poor Malcolm. My goodness. This guy I gets fired like 20 times before we reach half of the season. But, you know, I could not root for her because of the way she was treating other people. And the thing is that that's another thing that I struggled with, where I was like, okay, not everybody's happy-go-lucky. This isn't a DC television show. This isn't The Flash. We're a little far from The Flash, where you can laugh at all. Winfrey said fun is subjective, and I believe that. I understand that. But I had, me personally, zero fun watching this show. And Krysten Ritter, performance-wise, great, but as the character Jessica Jones is written, yeah, okay, maybe I did want to see her reconcile with her mom a little bit, but I knew where that was going. The law was on their tail. Somebody was going to get killed. Her mom was going to make some decision, and we wouldn't see this character around again. So it's tough to have a hero. This is the hero. This is the namesake that's on the title of this show. And you want her to do good things. And there's a lot of kind of like, snarky stuff that she does that just makes me go, gosh, I'm sick of watching this. It might have been okay after the first 2 episodes, but I think the bulk of this series is exploring why she is like that. And flashback here, flashback there. So I understand what they're trying to do with that. It's just, again, it's not something that I can sit here and go, okay, yeah, I'm ready for another 10 episodes of this. Hooray. So glad.
I feel like the way the character was written in this episode, in this series, this season, really takes you on a journey. Now, don't be so quick to jump all over me, guys. Just let me get through this. But I felt like we started with somebody who is just coming out of the Defenders and the death of Kilgrave and Civil War, which was referenced a bunch of times. So you have people
Really? When was that referenced?
There were different drops, references to the Raft. What I was about to say is they keep referring to her as a vigilante superhero, that sort of thing. So
yeah, so why isn't she, in all seriousness, if this is post Civil War, and
why hasn't she been either? Why isn't she an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or
vigilante now and just now entering the cultural lexicon because can never remember that actor's name.
Robert Downey Jr.?
William?
Defoe?
William or John Hurt? I can't remember which one.
Give us a movie. Where we
Are you
going
talking
here?
about General Ross, that actor?
Yes. I can't remember if it's John Hurt or William Hurt.
Let's go with William Hurt.
Because one of them is older and British, and
John Hurt was from Doctor Who. No fans here, right? But
William. It's William. Okay.
It's William.
It's William Hurt. Okay. But yeah, so because he comes along and says, well, there are some who prefer the word vigilante. Now, apparently the greater New York area actually added it to their word of the day calendar. I don't know. Like, why hasn't there, they made this big deal about, well, you should all register. Okay. So here's this known superpowered person. I mean, that would have, I can't express what a more interesting subplot
You're way off on
been.
this. Stop. You're way off on this. Number one,
All
what
right.
Civil War was about was saying the Avengers belong to the United Nations. And if you were going to be an Avenger, you had to go along with this. You can only go into battle when the UN says it's okay. That's what they were fighting against. You're thinking of the comic book where it was like everyone must register as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and half of the people said, fuck off.
And you must surrender your secret identities to us.
And that's not. She's not an Avenger. She's never said she was. Everything she got caught up in the Defenders was just sort of reacting to a situation that was unfolding in front of her. But she's not out. She's not actively out there fighting crime. She's not Spider-Man. So there's no reason that on that level where she would have to be involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. or the United Nations or the Avengers, there's no reason why any of that would touch her.
Further proof that elements of how they did Civil War were short-sighted and stupid, but I digress.
I don't want to have that debate.
I know.
Anyway, what I was trying to get across was, so you have this person who, this damaged person who's now struggling with being in the limelight, which she's actively fighting against. There was how that affects her in her living environment, how that affects her in her job, how that just affects her day-to-day life. I enjoyed that. That was the first part of the season. Then you have Patsy pushing on her. Don't you want to know where you come from? Don't you want to know why you're superpowered and you've been blessed with these powers? And there's the internal struggle of, does she really want to open up that Pandora's box? Does she want to know how she got to be who she is, or does she just want to move forward and live her life, preferably apparently as alcohol soaked as possible? I liked that. They didn't do that. Could have gone too long. I feel like it was just right. It was just at that point where I was starting to say, all right, either do this or don't, but do something. And they got right to that point, and then they proceeded. Then she's hot on the trail of her mom. She finally realizes that her mom is in fact alive, and she's this superpowered monster woman. Now you have the real meat of the season. You have Jessica wrestling with what does she do with this relationship? Does she accept this woman? Does she reject her? What does she do with the fact that the woman has killed several people? Because she has an internal, moral compass as to what's right and what's wrong. Clearly murder is wrong. And she, and so she has to wrestle with, does she turn the mother in, or does she let her get away with it? What does she do with this woman who she's missed for her entire life? She hasn't had this mother figure, mother actual, that she's craved. And I really like that about this season. I like the fact that she wrestled with all of those things, because I feel like if you put any one of us in those positions, we would all struggle with having a clear, defined road ahead of us with how to deal with something. And I like the fact that she outright says, right to the camera, I don't know what the next move is. I have no idea what to do. We watch so many of these shows where, the characters, just for the sake of drama, struggle a little bit with what to do next, and then suddenly everyone's got an idea and a plan falls neatly into place, and voila, lobster. This is one of those rare times where I see somebody really just stumbling with what the next move should be and doesn't always make the right step, doesn't always take the right step. So I loved all of that. That was attractive to me as a television viewer, to see this person wrestling with all of these choices that suddenly got dropped in her lap that she never wanted in the first place. And then you have her relationship with Patsy, who, Patsy starts, and we need to talk about this as well, but Patsy starts to drift into this inevitable turn towards Hellcat, and if you don't know what the comic books, if you're not aware of that character in the comic books and don't know that she exists, what you're watching is this person who is saying, who's playing the role of, hey, you're blessed with an ability that most people would love to have. You have an opportunity to do good things in the world, and you're squandering it. It's better. I should be that person. I should be you. Here you have this great relationship between somebody who's had everything taken away from her, and yet she goes on, versus somebody who has had everything handed to her and says, no, I want what you have too. What I have isn't even enough. I want what you've got because you don't deserve it. And how those aspects of their personalities wrestle with one another. I really enjoyed that aspect of the season as well. And finally, after her mother's gone and killed all these people, and she's rightly comes to the conclusion, killing is wrong. You should not kill people. She then has to confront her own demon of having killed Kilgrave, and while she can justify it in her own mind that he was a potential danger to everyone around her, strangely enough, other people are having some difficulty with it, number one. Number two, the inner guilt that she has for having done it in the first place. She did what was right, but at the cost of a portion of her soul. And I thought that really came out in those last couple of episodes where Kilgrave actually shows up, as a ghost.
Figment of her imagination?
Yeah, as a figment of her imagination. So, I get where you guys are coming from, and I'll give you, in turn, a chance to tell me everything I just said was a bunch of horseshit. But that's all of the things that I liked about her, and that's what kept me involved in the season from episode 1 to episode 13. Jesse, I'll let you give me 50 words or less first as a rebuttal, and then we'll move on to something else.
Okay, well, I think where I do agree with you when it comes to the dichotomy. That's a good point between her and Patsy Walker. I think that's actually something that I didn't pick up on. I can tell you that when she makes the decision to run off with her mom, she has no idea what's going to happen next. She should have called me, because I probably could have told her, well, hey, your mom's going to die pretty soon. So just be ready, because this is comics. Okay? This is a comic book show.
Have you heard of Uncle Ben? He died.
Yeah, the cops are on your tail. I know what your character's all about. I know how this is all going to end. Did you guys know that her mom, I can't even remember her name. What was her? Alyssa Jones, which is a neat little trick on the word alias, by the way. Alyssa Jones. What's that? Yeah, that's funny. Alyssa Jones was never she was not in the comics. She's completely new. So this is, even though she was a brand new character, I knew what was going to happen as soon as Jessica made the decision what she was going to do. It seemed like she was going to run off with her mom. I mean, maybe she'd turn her in. I don't know. But she was going to try and do something to figure out what to do. But it was all going to end badly. So I'll stop there.
Right, small correction here. Alyssa Jones is Mrs. Campbell. Mrs. Campbell is a fictional character in Marvel Comics, character created by Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos. He appeared in Alias number 22. Mrs. Campbell is the mother of Jessica Campbell, who would grow up to become Jessica Jones. While driving to Walt Disney World, Miss Campbell got into an argument with her husband, causing them to get distracted by driving into a military convoy that was carrying hazardous chemicals. The car swerved, bro, off the road.
Because those mythological hazardous chemicals are so great for health.
The car swerved off the road and landed in an embankment, killing everyone except the daughter Jessica.
Okay, so in the comics, she actually dies. Did they say she becomes a superhero at all? Or not superhero, but a superpowered being?
As near as I can tell, she's dead.
Okay, all right. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I think this iteration of Alyssa is a bit different than, completely different, considering she's still alive. Winfrey, I'll let you. Are you turning over to Winfrey for a rebuttal or what?
Sure.
Whatnot.
All right. I'm not going to say that everything you said is incorrect because it isn't. Like, if I'm going to, there's fair criticism of this season and then there's unfair criticism. I like to think most of mine are fair. The real problem I had there's two major issues with the character of Jessica throughout this season. One is, and I mentioned this before, this is an issue of kind of the writing. All of the actual development is kind of it exists at the very end and nowhere else. If we're supposed to be on a journey, I'd like to think that we don't spend 9 episodes traveling 20 miles an hour and then the last 3 at Mach 5.
Yeah,
which is kind of what we got here.
So you're one of the people who said the biggest problem with this season is the pacing.
Sort of. It's not so much pacing as it is content of pacing. Like, I don't mind slower paced television. I don't mind slower paced movies. I have to be engaged for something that is slower. I mean, really, I have to be engaged in things that move quickly as well. Otherwise, they're pointless as, Michael Bay's filmography. But this almost takes the opposite approach in the sense that, no, we're not actually going to go really anywhere. But boy, here's all this, loosely emotional content. I don't have a good comparison. Like, if Michael Bay made Hallmark movies. If you had the Hallmark equivalent of a Michael Bay film, that's kind of what we get here.
I don't understand how people work, but here's an explosion.
No, that's George Lucas. This is more, boy, I don't know how to write really good dialogue, so instead here's people looking distraught. I agree with you about, the interactions between Jessica and Trish, and Trish's inevitable descent into these self-justified villains should be interesting. Assuming we get season 3, and I can't imagine that we wouldn't. It's, again, my biggest gripe with this season is both pacing and structure. There's a lot of disconnect, and a lot of it doesn't flow as much as it really needs to if you're going to make a lot of these, this kind of more cerebral story. That's fine. I mean, I don't care that it's light on action. I really don't. That doesn't bother me at all. Provided that what you have instead is engaging. And there's a lot in this season that just isn't interesting. And maybe that's just me. Maybe other people out there feel completely differently.
I feel like that's you, though. I feel like you're making a value judgment on content. I like this, not that. This is good, this is bad. But that's all according to Winfrey. Because I just laid out 10 things that I thought was interesting. That I thought were interesting.
You really found everything in episode 5 interesting.
All right. You're going to put me on the spot. Oh, the octopus. Let's see. Let's read. Let's go through this just so I can answer your question. Jones spends a day at the police station before Hogarth convinces her to tell the truth. Okay, I thought there was a good debate there over how they should handle
that
things.
went 20 minutes too long.
All right. Detective Eddie Costa believes Jones' story and releases her, with Jones promising to keep Costa informed as she continues to investigate.
That was good.
But I enjoyed the stuff.
I liked Costa. Like the interplay between him and Jones is one of the highlights of this whole season.
And while his black cop partner there doesn't get a whole lot to do, I do like the fact that you had two sides of an argument represented in these two detectives vis-a-vis what to do with all these superpowered vigilantes living in the city. I really like the fact that at least they took some time to show that not everybody is going to embrace these people, and that there are going to be real problems, as far as those who think that superpowered individuals taking the law into their own hands is a recipe for disaster, which it often is, at least in fiction. Walker, bailed out by her mother, struggles with the after effects of using the IGH drug. Yeah, we really need to talk about that next. With her new boyfriend, Griffin Sinclair, asks her to marry him, but Walker turns him down. Oh my God, that whole build up to the proposal and then her reaction. Yeah, I was gripped. I'm not joking. I really was. Oh my God, that broke my heart. I was.
Oh, you are really?
Yeah.
You didn't see that coming. Wow.
I don't spend a lot of my time, like, it has to be, you've done enough shows with me now. I don't spend a lot of my time, like, trying to anticipate
about these things.
No, I really don't. I just try to be entertained by what I'm watching. Sorry. And I don't spend a lot of time trying to look behind the curtain to see how the magic is performed. Unless it's really obvious, and then that's a problem.
Really, no, like, if there's a curtain there, I won't look behind it. I have an issue with people doing it out in the open, which is what so many of these shows do.
All right, smarty. She takes the IGH...
I told you. I mean, again, Luke Cage is another example of this. I knew what was going to happen. Beat for beat. I've just absorbed enough material in the genre.
She takes the IGH drug again. Dukas takes... excuse me. Green to Hogarth, who agrees to place her in a safe house. Before then, Hogarth asks Green about IGH's experiments. Jones meets with David Kowecki, an inmate at a mental hospital serving time for murder at Green's fellow David Kowecki, an inmate at a mental hospital serving time for the murder of Green's fellow nurse, who was actually killed by the mysterious woman. I mean, I wasn't completely gripped by what was happening here, but it was fine. It was part of the mystery. Not everything's gonna hit the same pitch and interest necessarily. Jones learns of a shared interest in octopi that Kowecki has with an IGH doctor and visits the aquarium. She recognizes the doctor, Carl Malice, in a new memory from after the incident. He is meeting with the mysterious woman who smashes a glass enclosure to cover their escape when they see Jones. Okay, your problem is the stuff with the octopus and the inmate, I guess?
I have so many problems.
Boy.
Really, I could have picked... look, I picked that episode largely at random. I had like 7. Then in my head, okay, no, these are deeply problematic.
But you're asking me, did I find everything in 5 to be, gripping? Some more so than others, but overall, none of the episodes really lost me the way they seem to have lost you guys. Okay, I think that there is where we're finding a difference in how we approach this season. There seem to be pockets where, for one reason or another, the show just loses you entirely, and there goes your interest level, and it kind of colors everything after the fact. The show never lost me. Now, I can tell you about shows that have lost me where I was like, I'm fucking done with this. Gotham, I'm looking squarely in your direction. There were episodes, there were seasons of Arrow, as I was catching up on those,
Arrow,
where, God damn it, where, I would tune out for like entire episodes because I just wasn't interested in what was happening. I was just trying to get through the season. This didn't happen here. I honestly feel that way. That at no point did it completely lose me, the way Gotham or Arrow has.
That's fair. Again, that's how you, in particular, enjoyed it. Again, I felt... I mean, really, if you shave like 3 episodes off of this season, you're probably in a much stronger place, and then make them actually like condense and trim.
I feel like we've said that about
things.
I feel like we've said that about a lot of these Marvel shows, though.
Oh, yes.
Quite frankly, I think we've said that about a lot of Netflix's shows. That 13 episodes is just too long.
13 episodes is fine if you have if you actually have it planned out and laid out and it makes sense. The real problem becomes, okay, we're going to fill 13 episodes. Now, what you really have to ask yourself is, do you actually have enough for 13 episodes?
Do you have the content? Can you make it interesting enough? You can do 13. Just make it something that I want to watch.
I mean, I don't think Punisher had a weak episode. I don't really think Luke Cage had a weak episode.
Oh, I don't know. I remember that discussion, and we all...
I might have to... No. I had issues with the totality of Luke. I don't think I ever pointed to one episode and went, "No, you get out." It was more, boy, I didn't need 30 minutes of hip hop concerts throughout the course of my season of television.
No. Never mind your racist views on Luke Cage. Let's go back. Let's go back to Punisher for a moment, okay? You honkies, you. We all talked about how there were aspects of Punisher that went on too long and didn't need to be. They didn't need to have an entire episode dedicated to the Punisher chasing fucking what's his face around a Ferris wheel. Not a Ferris wheel, around a merry-go-round. Yeah.
You mean the finale when he and Billy Russo have their shootout and throwdown?
It did not need an hour. That was 10 to 20 minutes at best.
I think that's all it had. It wasn't the full episode.
It went on forever. And I distinctly remember having this conversation.
You felt like it went on forever. I think if you actually clocked it out, it didn't actually take that long.
It went on for 20 hours.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
As did that rendition of Hail to the Chief.
Jesse, you want to step in between us as we have the sissy slap fight?
The one thing that I can remember about The Punisher is that, yes, we agreed that it could have been shortened, but there wasn't any one episode where we were like, okay, this is outright wrong. We shouldn't be, this isn't something we should have to deal with. Now, I'm looking at episode 5 of Jessica Jones here, just going through TV Time, looking at some of the snapshots, some of the more popular stuff, memes and stuff that they threw up on the episode. The one thing that kind of confused me, because right here, you just went down through the whole plot synopsis of what happened in that episode, but right at the end, okay, Jessica's mom and the doctor are there at the zoo.
Aquarium.
The aquarium, and her mom looks up and sees her. Now, the whole time that you get this sense that the mom sort of wants to be reunited with the daughter in some way, right?
No, not at that time. Not at that point.
Time. Not at that point. Now, explain to me why. Why was she not wanting to be reunited with Jessica?
Dude,
then?
Okay, this is easy.
Because the
fucking
representation of the evil white patriarchy had not told her it was time yet.
All right.
I mean, I have a serious problem with the...
No, do you want a serious answer? No. Damn it, I'm going to answer him, because he asked the question, and you decided to throw your dick out there and swing it around for people instead of giving an actual answer.
Look, big white whale.
Go
ahead.
I promise Sean there'd be no more dick swinging. Anyway. The answer, Jesse, was very simple, and it was told in the flashback episode where the mother ends up killing the boyfriend in the alley, if you'll recall. At that point, the mother had decided that Jessica was better off without her. Number one, she knew she couldn't control herself, that she'd zone out, into almost like a semi-catatonic state, and, kind of like the Hulk, where her rage just takes over, and she's acting on pure impulse and emotion, and in doing so, she kills people. And she thought, and not only does she kill the guy, but she realizes that she hurt Jessica because Jessica didn't know the full context of what had happened. So Jessica just thinks, like, the guy got killed by the thugs.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And Jessica doesn't know that he was, like, setting her up and using her and all of that. She just thinks that her poor boyfriend got killed by thugs. And the mother realizes that she's more of a harm to Jessica in her present condition than not. That as a mother, she, at that time, in that place, she had nothing to offer Jessica of value, and therefore thought Jessica was better off without her. Jessica had a stepmom, Jessica had a place, Jessica had a life, and she felt like, oh, I'm going to bring this person is pain. And as a mother, she didn't want to do that, so she thought, I'll just start again with Malice in this other life, and I will leave Jessica to her own devices. She's better off that way.
Now, prior to this, they sat down across from each other at a table in a bar.
Yeah.
And had a calm conversation, correct?
Until Jessica said she would have rather died in the car wreck. And now you're talking about two, again, a philosophical debate that's also mirrored between Jessica and Trish, which is, is there any value in these powers, in this second chance that you've been given? And Jessica says no. Jessica, what's interesting to me about this character, and I think appealing on a certain level, is Jessica is just a few shades shy of suicidal. Like, Jessica is...
she exists in that obnoxious place where, boy, I want to die, but I don't have the balls to do it.
Oh, jeez.
One could call it obnoxious, sure. I think by virtue of what I do
as a guy, and look, I've been there. I spent years in that place. It sucks. It sucks being around people like that. It sucks even more when there's when you have to watch 13 consecutive hours of television featuring them.
Well, hang on. We're being glib now, but I think you just hit upon maybe why you're reacting negatively to the season. This touches you in a very negatively.
No, look, I have issues with the season personally. I have issues with it structurally.
Okay, I'm not saying that your structural arguments are without validity, but I do think it's worth pointing out that you and I are both reacting from a personal level to this season in two different ways. I work with people like this, like you, I guess, like her, on a day-to-day basis. This is my life, but I'm working at it. I'm coming at it from a helper point of view. I work with these people in order to get them away from that place in their life. At least that's what they tell me I'm supposed to be doing. I mostly just do documentation and and referrals. But anyway, enough about my crazy job. Whereas I think there's a lot of reflection going on for you. And I don't know. I don't want to psychoanalyze you. That's not what we're trying to do here. But I do think that maybe there's for you, there's a kind of, I don't want to deal with this. This is hitting me where I used to live or live now, and I reject it out of hand for that reason. I don't want to deal with this.
I don't mind dealing with that as long as it's interesting. And I have a real hard time finding anything of perpetual interest in the majority of this season.
Okay.
And again, maybe that's me. I can only speak for myself in this instance. Again, I can talk about issues of writing. I can talk about issues of structure. I can talk about issues of, oh, God, the side plots.
All right,
because, boo.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys are itching to trash the Jerry Hogarth stuff. So, for the sake of time, Jesse, do you feel like you're that part of the discussion?
My question is answered?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I can kind of understand that. I just, going back through and looking at some of the stuff that happened, after you watch the end of the series, you're kind of like, well, they just need to hug it out. And then, right at the beginning, we would have probably about 6 episodes less. But, that's neither here nor there. They had a story to tell. They had a very long game.
There's been a lot of stories that are told about biological parents meeting their children that they gave up for adoption, and their children not always welcoming them back into life. Some stories, the children are in a place where they can welcome their parents back and understand where they were coming from, when they gave them up. Others have some real difficulties with it, and I think that's what the authors of this season were trying to go at. Is, Jessica's not mentally in a place where she was ready to allow this person back in her life. And then when you look at the circumstances surrounding it, all of the science fiction-y elements around it, it definitely complicates things. This is not as easy a situation for any being, broken or otherwise, to deal with.
I was fine with that. Like that, honestly, their big tearful reunion when she ends up punching her in the face.
Like you do.
I was okay with, no, that didn't bother me at all. I was okay with elements of her reaction. I was completely okay with it. It made sense for the character. It was well acted. I don't really have a major gripe with that.
Okay. Let's talk about Trish. And let's talk about drugs and rehab. No. So a couple of elements of Trish's story in this season. You have the I want to be a superhero, I want to Easter egg, I want to Easter egg, I want to Easter egg elements. You have the I am a drug addict, And
we should really just refer to her as like Veruca Salt going forward, because really.
When I first met my wife, she had this little imitation thing that she would do. She was like, "Mummy," this is when we were looking to buy a house, so there's some context here. But we're out there looking for a house, and she wanted to live in South Tampa, and she would say, "Mummy, buy me a bungalow in South Tampa." That's Patsy all over. But so you have this character who is an addict. It doesn't matter what the substance
can we also
is. She's
for
just
the
an addict.
Can we also for the moment bring up her shocking lack of self-awareness?
Oh, wow.
Be my guest. You have the ball, sir. You have the clamshell.
Okay. She gets this inhaler that grants you temporarily increased senses, increased speed and reflexes and strength.
Yeah, it's meth. It's aerosol meth.
Whatever it is. Like, they never actually get into the specifics of it, but
It's meth.
it's horribly toxic.
It's meth.
It's meth and PCP, because you actually do need the physical lack of limitations that come from no longer feeling pain that you get with PCP components.
And you know that.
But it's partially it's partially organic, so I'm sure there was weed in there somewhere too. Let's throw it all in there. The point being, she has this,
and weed's not a
because
drug.
because she is completely drowning in inferiority complex over everything that isn't perfect in her life, though she can't actually admit this, she starts using this. And despite violent physical reactions to the withdrawals, despite looking like a coked-out streetwalker after she gets off of it, despite the night sweats and the paleness and the bloodshot eyes, and literally every single symptom of withdrawal, she's, "No, I'm not on anything." Let's contrast this with another addict from the series, because Malcolm's an addict.
Mm-hmm.
The first time he takes a hit off of that, his reaction is, "Oh, what the hell?" And he literally runs away from her.
If he could have run out of his own body, he would have.
Yes. Now, and this is what kind of kills me about that whole circumstance is, if you want to get into clinical terms, I imagine Trish is still in denial about her addiction.
Yeah.
She views it as a negative social consequence when she's high, not that this is actually a problem.
I will tell you from working with addicts for over 10 years that, and I see this especially in the jails, we get people who shoot everything they can find into their veins, get arrested, we dry them out, they get released, go right back to doing it again. But in that interim where they're drying out, it's just the worst. These people are miserable. They're puking, they're retching, they're sweating, they feel like hot garbage.
It's terrible. It's one of the worst things in the world.
Right, and this is with being given benzodiazepines to help them, with so they don't die from the withdrawal effect. Because withdrawing from alcohol or withdrawing from Xanax could kill you, and
it has to be done properly.
Yeah. So we medicate them, we put them in the infirmary, we care for them as best we can in an incarceration setting, and you would think the experience of having gone through that hell would deter them from doing it again, but addiction in the mind, let alone the physicality of the substances themselves, is so strong. Just the psychological aspects of addiction can be so strong that as soon as they get out, they go right back to doing it again, knowing full well that when they stop, they're going to go through that same hell again. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very well portrayed in Trish's character.
Yeah, my complaint is not about the writing of the character. This is more this is about that character and their own denial about their addiction. And again, you have an immediate point of comparison where you have another addict character. In fact, he's devolving into sexual addiction a bit as throughout earlier parts of the season, who, when exposed to this chemical, immediately knows exactly what's coming and is, again, aware enough to go, "This is the dirt worst. How could you do this to me? I am leaving." Versus a character still very much in denial about this. and it's well done. It's annoying to look at because people with addiction are deeply, deeply frustrating to deal with. But
I know I've asked this before, but for the sake of argument, have you ever seen The Basketball Diaries?
No.
It's been a while.
Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of that movie is all I can think about when I see like fictionalized accounts of people in the throes of addiction, because not even The Wire dealt with that aspect of it. I mean, the one time you see a character really fall from grace and struggle with addiction is Bubbles, but that's after he accidentally killed a kid. This is, if I remember correctly, at the end of Basketball Diaries, Leonardo DiCaprio is just at the end of his fucking rope. And
Requiem for a Dream deals with a lot of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. But if you haven't seen it lately, it's worth a rewatch. And if you haven't seen it at all, it's definitely worth sitting through. A young Leonardo DiCaprio crying out for drugs. It's a fun story. Jesse, your thoughts on Miss Trish Walker?
Trish Walker and her drug addiction. We had to get to an end point with Trish Walker, and that's turning her into Hellcat. And the one way that I think that they figured they could do that, it felt like they were writing this drug addiction stuff in order to get to that point. We have to get her to Hellcat somehow, and using the addiction side of things seemed, I wouldn't call it weak, because it was actually, I guess, somewhat of a good way of trying to get her there, because it had been talked about before. She's the Hollywood actress, and has been exposed to all that. But one of the comments that I remember reading earlier was that there were way too many characters that people loved at the beginning of the show and then turn around and hated at the end of this show. And I think she was probably the biggest culprit of that, because a lot of the stuff that she did, again, was all to get that fix, man. I got to get my fix. Well, one more fix.
Well, I keep saying she's an addict, and I'm trying to leave the word drug out of there because I don't think drugs matter as such. I think drugs are a thing you can be addicted to, but it is the addictive personality that drives her choices.
Oh, no, like her fall from grace is going to be predicated on her addiction to adulation.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The first time she screws up as a hero and everyone points out that, she's going to go full Ronda Rousey as far as that fall from grace. No, I'm on top of the world. No, you cocked up and you died. You killed someone. You didn't save someone. You bludgeoned an innocent person. The negative publicity associated with that and her own ego associated with her own perceived virtue is going to cause her to snap, and is what's going to be the inevitable thing that pushes her into conflict with Jessica as far as heroics.
I was going to say, can we go ahead and talk about the big spoiler at the end when I thought the law was coming to take care of Jessica and her mom, and it wasn't her mom after all. It was Trish Walker, who shows up with a gun in her hand and blows the brains out of Alyssa. Yeah. How am I supposed to like this character now? How am I supposed to do that? And I think that's the point, obviously, because now you're thinking, well, how in the world can Jessica and Trish get along after this? Well, there's no way.
Well, let's ask an even I don't want to say a better question, but let's ask a different question. The whole season, one of the things Jessica's struggling with is murdering Kilgrave. From start to finish, we bookended this season with Jessica struggling with when is it right to kill. Right? When is it a good thing to kill another human being? Under what circumstances? And then what are the consequences of making that decision? And and at the end of the day, I think she, while she's able to forgive herself for killing Kilgrave because there were extenuating circumstances, she ultimately comes to the belief that it is never right to kill. And then you look at Trish, who is riding that wave with her, and he's like, you're a badass, you're a badass, you're a badass. Well, I want to be a badass too, and equates Alyssa Jones with Kilgrave as being the same kind of danger when they couldn't be any further apart when you really think about it. And she says, no, they're the same, and blows her head off. And Jessica's like, no, you've missed the point, you crazy person.
Would you like me to write either the mid-season part of season 3 or the finale? And that's going to be, these girls are going to work their issues out and they're going to hug at the end of things. Is that how this is going to end? Or are they going to... How would you handle this, Mark Radulich, if something like that happened?
No, I think that first of all, I think you're writing the porn version of Jessica Jones season 3.
I said hug. I said hug.
Yeah, okay.
I said hug.
You mean scissor.
Uh-oh. Now my son showed up.
Oh, gosh.
Now I'll let you guys talk. I'll put this on mute. Does your butt itch, son? Okay, all right. He said no. I'll be right back.
Terrific. Well, I want to address this when he comes back since he asked the question. But I was talking about, let's kick the word addiction around for just a second. Because she spends a lot of this season searching for purpose. And she feels like, well, if she can, she's the one pushing Jessica to find out the secret behind IGH and her powers. Not because of anything that would benefit Jessica, though that's how she contextualizes and frames her argument.
She's a crappy salesman, is what that boils down to. She sells this investigation to Jessica, while in reality only wanting it to try and legitimize her career. She's not happy doing a lifestyle talk radio show, even though Mark would kill for that gig.
Oh, are you kidding me? I don't know. I used to think I wanted callers, then I got some and decided maybe not so much.
What you need is someone to screen them, because we don't have that. That's what we're really missing.
This is true. I don't know, man, because I used to listen to the Rush Limbaugh show. Now, he has a call screener and millions of people calling him, and still nuts got through, who, if I had to take those calls, I would have shot myself. There's some truly, truly silly people out there.
There are, but the point being, again, this is a person with a lot of success across a lot of different venues who is constantly still dealing with inferiority complexes.
I'm not good enough, and she seems to think.
And
that...
to be fair, her pathologically narcissistic mother planted that seed real deep in her brain from a young age.
Yeah, she did. I think.
Why was no one killed that woman?
The one thing I will. Okay, hey Jesse.
Hey.
All right. So you wanted me to fantasy book season 3. I think season 3 really comes to a head with Jessica versus Patsy. I think
and then they hug it out.
No, they're not going to hug it out. I think
no one's going to die, Mark Radulich. They're not going to kill each other.
I don't think anyone dies, but I think.
I wish they would.
I think what you're going to see is Jessica and Hellcat come to vicious blows, and Jessica just come just short of killing her, and saying, I'm not you. I'm not a murderer. And she's going to say, but Kilgrave, and she's going to say, the fact that you don't understand what caused me to kill Kilgrave just shows you never deserved to be a hero in the first place. And I think that's where it's going to be left.
Oh, okay. So we're not going to have a happy ending.
No, this is Jessica Jones. I think they firmly established there are no happy endings.
That's true. That is true.
The biggest problem with the show running over the course of, say, 5 seasons is that they're not actually going to have the stones to kill everyone off the way the tragic elements of the story have set up and kind of demand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone has to die, and they won't actually do it.
Dude,
I would not be opposed to them killing Patsy in the next season like that, and to have that be the season finale.
It is pretty well written that Jessica Jones is a very, very tragic character. We just covered Jessica Jones Uncaged. Was that released this week? I would assume it was, since we're synergizing all the time. And the first 6 issues end with her in a heap on her knees and her hands up to her face, bawling her eyes out, because Luke Cage came and grabbed her kid and took her away. So she wrecks everything in her own life. And you want to root for this. People, if you're rooting for Jessica Jones, just be ready. You're going to get let down a lot. A lot. Because everything will fall apart around her. And That's where you want to root for a happy ending for this girl, and to not get it is going to be really rough.
Yeah, you do. I'd love a happy ending from Jessica Jones.
Grrr.
Grrr.
I mean, we watched in the last was it the last episode where her mom gets killed in front of her. That's horrible. No matter what her mom did, she was on the path of reconciliation, and we watch her mom get killed right in front of her by her sister / best friend. Sad. Continue. I'm done talking.
This show's going to get an award for least woke with comments like the one I just made. Just want to put that out there.
Least woke.
Piss off.
I hate a blowjob joke. It was
Look, the totality of the woke movement is a bunch of jackasses sucking themselves off.
Whoa!
Hey, another blowjob comment. That's 2 in a row in less than 5 minutes.
I don't want to be involved in this club.
Speaking of blowjobs, let's talk about Jerry Hogarth.
Oh boy. And lack thereof.
Transitions.
We love them. All right. I'm not going to... I have spent a lot of time talking on this podcast, in defense of this show and what I liked about it. I have bled from the heart like the good liberal that I am, or at least I've been accused of being. I'm going to actually kick this one over.
You're the most liberal on this podcast, if nothing else.
This is very true. But I'm going to kick this one over to you guys, because I know that this is just red meat as far as,
I want to hear your defense of it first.
Do you really? Because I'm pitching the idea that you guys are just chomping at the bit to tell the world how shitty this entire plot line was, and I want you to do it. So if nothing else, I want to be entertained now. So I'll give it over to you, Winfrey. I will defend it because I have a defense of it. I have a defense of Catwoman. I have a defense of this. But I want to... I'm going to let...
anything other than Carrie-Anne Moss is a good actress, you have nothing.
Okay, fuck you. But go ahead and make your case that this is shit. And then, Jesse...
That's all you've got, isn't
it? My defense? Fuck you. How about that?
I just told you, your only defense mechanism here is that Carrie-Anne Moss is a good actress, which I will agree with.
They owed her something here. It's like they owed her, hey, we've got a show and we want you to be part of it, but we're not actually going to make you part of it.
You're going to get mediocre. You're going to be a good supporting character throughout the first season, and I think there's a lot good that can be said about the character of Hogarth as well as Carrie-Anne's portrayal in the first season. She's a conniving slimeball, which is fine. Sure, I can live with that. And then, but again, I don't know. Apparently, there was some gravitation towards that character, towards I can't be second banana. I need my own thing to do for this season. And okay, we're going to give you all this time to deal with mortality, and you've been diagnosed with ALS, which actually would have been somewhat interesting. The powerful person who has devoted their life to the hollow pursuit of money and money, esteem, and influence, coming to the realization that none of that can help me. I am screwed because my body's shutting down and going to turn on me. I mean, that's been done, and it's been done well in the past. There's nothing really wrong with that. Instead of just kind of letting that be, we get a little of that, and then we get a whole lot of this long con. Now, cons are only interesting if you're in on it from the beginning, and you see, and sorry, how do I phrase this? They're only really interesting if you're in on it from the beginning, and are on the side of the con artist, and you can kind of watch things unfold. I mean, there's a whole genre of movies about that in television, and it's great. That's a perfectly fine, trope for methodology for selling your story. Or you're on the receiving end and you never see it coming. And then of course, if you're on the receiving end and never see it coming, you have to then devote a significant amount of time to figuring out what actually happened. Here we unfortunately get this mediocre mishmash of the 2 points. We're not really in on it from the beginning. It's to a character that I mean, really, there's nothing to like about this woman. I mean, Mark, let me start with that. Do you disagree with that premise? Like, regardless of acting, the character is not someone that you like or want to see succeed, really.
I don't find her to be a compelling character, but I do not wish death on her.
Fair enough. Neither do I.
I wasn't either.
She doesn't go in and say, "No, I have ALS," and I'm cheering. Like,
yes! The bitch has been brought down!
No, I mean, yeah, like, no. I have no issues with, again, not particularly compelling, not a nice person. So you don't really care when bad things happen to her. There's no real, you're not emotionally invested in this as a person you want to see succeed and go forward in life. So if they happen to die, well, okay. Such is life. And we spend a lot of time with her sort of coming to grips with death and then trying to find a way out of it and then being taken for a ride. And then to be fair, like, her revenge plot is pretty sweet. I was down for that. It fit with the character. But there is just so much time devoted to her and that nurse who is kind of slowly weaseling her way into her good graces to get her boyfriend out of prison. There's that whole protracted scene in the first couple of episodes where she goes on a coked out bender with like 3 hookers.
Like you
that
do.
That just never ended. Like, it
didn't. Oh my gosh! I remember sitting there going, "This, I'm uncomfortable now. I really, there's no reason to continue to have to sit through this, and we can go to the next scene, please."
And it just.
I'm not gonna lie. I fast forwarded through it.
Which is not the sign of a well-constructed sequence. When you reach for the fast-forward button, like,
yes.
Wow, does that say something about that scene and us as men? That 3 straight men we're forced to watch a scene of women getting it on and partying, and we're like, oh God, fast forward through this horse shit. I
hadn't thought about it in that context, but yes, it does.
Put your clothes back on, Jerry.
Again, it's not that it's a bad premise. It's not even that, it's not that it's a bad premise. It's not that it's badly acted. Again, Carrie-Anne Moss does a really good job selling the desperation of someone who knows that, no, I have this incurable disease, and at times wanting to end her life on her terms and being vengeful and vindictive and desperate and vulnerable to, I mean, again, like, this character is portrayed not in a way that you'd think she'd be taken for a ride by a couple of low-rent con artists. And yet that's exactly what happens as she becomes desperate to avoid the grim specter of becoming Stephen Hawking.
Mm. All right.
Again, I don't have a problem with the conception of this idea. I have serious issues with how much time it took. I have serious issues with the way it was interspersed throughout the story. It was more like, I mean, she's not quite Poochie, but there might be an argument there.
Okay.
No, everyone has to be asking what's going on with Jerry. Nothing.
Jesse, go ahead and wait.
That's my big gripe with this. Like, if you want to point to a badly executed bit of this, and again, I've pointed to a few others that I can accept there's reasonable debate on. There's not really anything, again, apart from just Carrie-Anne Moss's acting, which is good, about that entire subplot and its execution that is good.
All right, Jesse, I know that you were chomping at the bit also to tell me how much shit this was, so go ahead.
3 words. I don't care. I could really honestly care. I cared very little for what was going on with Jerry, okay? She was not a character I was invested in. Not a character that made... What influence did she have on the plot of this damn show? And that whole side story had nothing to do. Nothing to do with Jessica Jones resolving issues with her mom. Now, one of the things that I sent to you, Mark Radulich, prior to this, right before I finished the season, I think, was that imagine if they did this with Microchip and Frank Castle. But, they took, here's Microchip and here's Frank, and we're just going to have them cross paths, maybe one episode, and then we're going to do two totally different things with both characters throughout the whole series. Punisher would have sucked horribly, because we're watching two different stories unfold. The name, again, says Punisher, and we're subject to this whole piece of story that has nothing to do with the Punisher, if that was the case. In this case, we have Jerry Hogarth. It doesn't say Jessica Jones starring, neon letters down there on the bottom, or featuring the story of Jerry Hogarth. That's not on the poster. I didn't see it.
Actually, though, you could totally sell the misanthropic lesbian adventures of Carrie-Anne Moss as a subset of Jessica Jones, which is what this felt like. It does not feel connected to the story.
Not one bit. And I mean, Mark, I don't fast forward through my shows. I really don't understand how you can do it. Apparently, that's probably a habit. I'm going to
I did it
up.
frequently for this season. There were huge stretches when I'm like, okay, we're not going anywhere. Let me scan my thing across the bottom and see when the scene ends.
Yeah.
This goes on for another 5 minutes. Yeah, no.
Well, I guess I am the one representative of this show that watched every single second of Jerry Hogarth on screen. And yes, the revenge plot at the end, that was kind of cool. But again, why the fuck should I care? Why do I care? This has nothing to do with the main plot that's going on. It should have
not even an interesting side character.
It should have never been in there. You want to talk about shortening episodes? This right here is a prime example of what should have been on the cutting room floor before even it was shot. They should have said, "Hey, we can't afford you, Carrie. Just show up one episode. We're taking the rest of that money and we're going to put it into some more special effects or something. Put it somewhere else."
The CGI of Alyssa breaking that tank wouldn't make my eyes bleed. Because boy, was that bad.
So I mean, it was the worst part of this series, and keep Whizzer alive for 2 or 3 more episodes. Make him a side character. Oh my goodness, I would have been happy if he would have joined Team Alias for some reason and been the comic sidekick. And when I say sidekick, like Jessica Jones could kick him in the ass every once in a while when she was pissed. All right, but I can't go on anymore other than just I hope that I'm not alone. It doesn't sound like I'm alone here on this podcast. And when I see tweets from people that say this series was the absolute best of what Marvel has brought to the Netflix table, I lose faith in okay, how did you fast forward too, sir? Did you fast forward too? I need to learn this habit because apparently that's making everything so great.
Okay, no,
right.
I will tell you why people are saying that, because the vast majority of people don't read comic books, don't like comic books, don't see the value in comic books, but know that comic books are kind of the in thing now in terms of creating television shows and movies. So they don't want to be seen as not hip. So it's like, okay, we'll watch the comic book stuff just so long as it's not really comic booky. We don't really want comic book stuff. We want stuff that transcends the comic books because comic books are dorky. So that's where that's coming from.
Yeah, it's not like I've been oppressed for the last 15, 20 years having to deal with people say, "Oh, you're just a big nerd." And now Marvel Comics and the cinematic universe has blown up. Everybody's jumped on this bandwagon that I've been on since I was 10. And then now I've got to try and sit here and say, "Oh, well, we don't like your Marvel Comics. We don't like that type. We don't want to be considered dorky." Fuck off. All right.
Wow, when Jesse curses. All right. Let's talk about. I feel like I'm doing on trial now. Me. Here we go. what's my best defense of this entire subplot? I thought it was kind of a fun thing to see this haughty, uptight, uptown, self-made woman get
She's
brought...
an uptown girl. Okay,
I'll start
Mark,
singing. I don't care.
Seriously, if you're going to go to Schadenfreude as your defense of this, that's even worse than Carrie-Anne Moss is a good actress.
Let me finish my argument, for fuck's sake.
Now that you have to retailor it because I called it, come on.
I'm going to keep talking here. I'm going to find where the mute button is on Skype.
It's on Winfrey's end. You have no control. Sorry.
None.
Damn it.
It's on mine.
Where's the mute button on Spreaker? All right. Oh, there is one. Hot dog.
Yeah,
No.
there probably is on the studio, yeah.
Yeah. Don't make me mute you. All right. As I was saying, Uptown Girl. There is a story to be told here in watching this Uptown Girl get brought low, only for her to think that she's beaten the unbeatable and realize she's been had. I understand that, well, she herself is not an interesting character, and so watching her rise and fall and slightly rise again might not be tremendously compelling. I thought the story in and of itself was compelling enough. I'm not saying it was the driving force behind the season, nor am I saying that alone kept me interested. And had that been the meat of the season, I'd be right there with you guys going, what was the point of any of this? This is not interesting to me. But as far as we can't be spending the entire time with Jessica and Patsy, let's give this other character something to do that tells us about the nature of man and society, I thought that's where its value was.
What? Can I ask you, just real quick, explain to me what was the character development that we got out of Jerry Hogarth here? From beginning to end, what did we learn?
I think, going into all of that, I think she had built up the facade of invulnerability, and she's made to be vulnerable. I think first she's brought down with ALS, and then she thinks she's beaten it, and she hasn't. And while she gets her little bit of revenge in the end, she's still a dying woman. She ends
up at the same place she started.
Thank you, Robert.
I don't. Does she? Do you know that for a fact? You don't.
She's a shitty person at the beginning. You have hope and that she's going to change her ways, Mark Radulich, because she's seen the light. She has been healed, my friend.
I don't think you know truly where she is by the end of that season. You just know that she got back.
You mean she's not... Hold on. So she's not extorting out her old partners as she would have done at the beginning of the season. She's not setting up a law firm because she's still a lawyer. She's not hiring a PI and a dick move behind Jessica's back because she's a terrible person. She's not recommitting herself towards her aura of invulnerability by specifically choosing the medication she's on while trying to cling to the facade of control. Exactly where she was at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
If your selling point is you don't know until the next season, that's a terrible argument that you should never make.
I feel like I've lost this argument and we should move on.
The end game was horrible. I mean, it really was. Again, I don't care. At what point am I going to say, oh, man, I can't wait for Jerry Season 3. When she shows up in Jessica Jones Season 3, all things are going to be so different. No, they're not. Nothing changed.
There was no value in seeing this woman with the facade of invulnerability suddenly become vulnerable and how she deals with it. I don't know, guys. I feel like there's showing
a Hallmark movie on about that right now if that's what you want to say.
Whatever. You guys are just not. You're not in touch with your inner women. That's the problem here. That's my argument.
I'm not saying there's no value in that story. I'm saying it has no value the way they implemented it over the course of this season.
I will grant you.
Not at all the same thing.
I will grant you. I stand corrected. You're absolutely right. She's exactly where she was at the beginning of this season. Her arc was more of a circle. Got it. However,
it's more of a dip. Like just this little blip on her, and really her worldview is reaffirmed in the sense that I'm a strong, independent woman who doesn't need no other woman because I'm a lesbian.
Okay, that's a circle. Again, I don't know why we're saying it's a dip. I think the phrase is she comes full circle. She's right back to where she started. I don't know why we're arguing over the geometry of this.
All right, fine. We won't debate semantics. The last thing I want to say about this. This season also featured a really annoying kid, and somehow I preferred his scenes to anything involving Jerry.
Are you going to kill someone, eh? That's great. All right, the last thing
I was so torn because he almost fell out of that window, and I went, I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Die! No, don't say no. Die! No.
And then she saves him, and you're kind of relieved, but you're also kind of like, oh God, he lived.
All right, my final comment on this, and then we're going to start to wrap up here because we've been at this now for an hour and a half. Remember when I said we weren't going to go 2 hours?
We're going to go pretty close to 2 hours.
Let me say this. I stand corrected. I do think you're right. I do think that in terms of arc and storytelling and character development, she begins where she ends, which your mileage may vary. I think in terms of how interesting or entertaining that might be. I will tell you that I think a story about a woman coming to grips with death and having to deal with betrayal is an interesting thing. And your snide remark that there's a Hallmark movie on for you right now, you girly man, whatever. But again, we're all entertained by different things, and I think that does speak to people. I think her story,
and it's not a bad. Again, like my issue is not that it exists.
Okay,
it's how it was implemented.
Well, you guys are saying it, and you're largely right about this, that it just felt tacked on and wasn't in any way related to the central story. But I would submit to you The Shield, The Wire, and several other shows where there are entire plot lines that have no connection to the central story, but are still interesting, and they have, and they involve interesting characters, and they are compelling to watch on screen. It doesn't always have to be anchored by the central story.
Sure. And if this was written as well as The Shield or The Wire, I wouldn't be having the issue that I am.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to continue to debate this further. I'm not going to argue that there might have been limitations to the writing.
I'm not even arguing that, you need, that side plots to that degree are not important to, letting a story breathe, to giving you something else to do with, the narrative. Like, no, you do. This just sucked.
I'm going to give Jesse the last word because Robert and I could have sissy slap fights all night long. I'm going to give Jesse here the last word.
In the past.
Well, I'll give Jesse the last word here on good old Jerry Hogarth and my defense therein in Winfrey's dogged prosecution.
It's easily for me to say no. I don't want her in the next season. I don't care. If you want to make her important, great, go ahead. Mark, you can defend all you want, but I recognized that she just didn't develop, and maybe that's why at the end of things I considered it a waste. So I don't care.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Had the last scene of Jerry in season 2 been her walking into the robbed apartment, falling on the ground and crying, been the last thing you saw of her, would your opinion change on the story or of how it was presented? I'm only asking Jesse.
What the robbed apartment?
Yeah, remember that scene when she comes home and she's been cleaned out and she just has that breakdown?
Oh, the robbed apartment. I was thinking that capital ROB. I'm like, whose apartment is this?
I don't have one.
What would it have changed differently? I don't know, because then you would have been interested as to, okay, what's the next step? Is there maybe she's? I would say maybe yes. Maybe I would have been like, okay, what's going to happen next with her? But what I would have loved to have seen is them tie that into something that matters. It doesn't even have to be Jessica Jones. If you were playing with other elements from different shows, great. You know, you're connecting it to this Marvel universe. You're connecting it. It's not even connected.
What did you want her to do? Go find the Punisher and say, "Hey, shoot this fucker"?
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? No, I mean the Punisher don't work like that. Well, then again, that would have been fun to see. Yeah, you know, one of the strongest seasons of Netflix series is Daredevil season 2. And that's because
you are talking to the wrong people about that.
You are.
Well, now hold on.
You really want
how
me
about
to...
the sections with the Punisher involved? Can I
episodes 1
can I
through
throw
3
that on there?
Episodes 1 through 3. That's fine.
No, 4. The first 4 episodes of Daredevil season 2 would be essentially perfect television, except Elektra shows up at the end and proceeds to ruin everything.
I will give you that. So, we have a very strong story told where it's tying in 2 parts of the Marvel universe. We have a great guest superhero in there, and they played well off of each other. None of that happened with Jerry Hogarth. Now, if they would have figured out a way to work that in there somehow, I would have definitely been invested in some way. But she was a shit character that had a shit attitude and ended up just as shitty at the end. That's it. Let's move on. We have beat the shit out of Jerry Hogarth, and I hope she doesn't come back.
And the award for least woke podcast. All right.
Why are we not woke, Mark Radulich? Because
we just beat the shit out of Jerry Hogarth. I don't know. Out of context, seems a little less woke than might be expected.
Stop saying woke.
No, woke.
Seriously.
No,
it's an embarrassment to you and everything you stand for.
Be more woke, Robert Winfrey.
Your children are actively feeling shame right now, and they can't even explain why.
They're having nightmares. It's like seeping into their subconscious.
I'm going to go see if my children are woke. Get it?
Daddy.
Daddy, I've forgotten how to be woke. All right. Psst, I don't care about being woke.
Just remember, Jonas, that as a white man, everything is your fault, and you have to apologize constantly.
Dude, he already feels that way. I can't tell you how many times he's gotten in trouble for something.
You have failed as a parent.
And he's just like, everything is my fault. All right, drama queen, go fuck yourself. Get in your room.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, enough of the life and times of parenting, Radulich. Final thoughts. Gentlemen, things left unsaid, characters left untalked about, any burning desires. Jesse, you're first. Go.
I want to say that it was hard for me to watch the character Alyssa Jones, the 61-year-old female, run. I don't know why I had a problem with that.
But she was a little awkward, yeah.
I remember when the dude tries to snipe her, and she flies off the handle, and she's got to run down some stairs, and Jessica Jones has got to take off after her. I'm like, you're going to catch up with her in like 2 seconds because this lady cannot run. And then she's got to run upstairs, and I'm like, this guy's going to be long gone by the time you get there.
She's only moderately more nimble on stairs than Hillary Clinton is.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I don't know. The fun thing about Krysten Ritter is that she's such a slight woman, and she's a skinny little thing. But so it's fun to see her like punch cars and throw people across a room. And I feel like they took this woman who's got some size on her, and they were like, oh, but she's got like Hulk strength. It's like, I don't know. This might have worked better had they picked more of a slight woman instead of a woman who could probably take Charlotte Flair in the WWF.
And I do want to say that one of my favorite comments that I had the opportunity to scroll across there on TV Time, there was a part in the series where Jessica Jones was complaining about how hot it was outside. She's like, New York, sweltering, heat, something along those lines. And you see her walking down the road in a leather jacket and jeans. Okay?
Well, apparently you've never lived in New York.
Apparently not. There's a style that you've got to black leather jacket and
yeah,
jeans.
It's 110 degrees out. You still wear your leather jacket. That's the law.
Got it. Okay, final word. Again, it's the bottom of the barrel for me. I hate going into something like this and hating it because this is supposed to be a Marvel series. It just wasn't done well. And I'll throw this out there. And none of this came up yet, but you guys understand that the showrunner, I had her name here. I got too many tabs opened up. But Melissa Rosenberg, okay? Season 2, she made a women-centric set with 13 female directors for these episodes. Did you guys know these were all directed by women?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
they made a
did.
big deal out of it because, hey, virtue signaling.
Now, have you
Look at how woke we are.
Oh, damn it! You beat me to it.
Oh, Winfrey.
I saved your children.
I didn't
all
want to talk over you.
I want some thanks for that.
I didn't want to talk over you, but you stole my bit, you bastard.
So one of the things I like,
Fortunately, Alfalfa was an orphan owned by the studio, so you know.
Jessica Jones was one of those Facebook pages that I liked, and something popped up on the feed there shortly after the season dropped, and it was I assume it was a picture of all the directors together, and it said something about women directing are going to be you're going to be seeing a lot more of it, and the thing, there was just like a few words at the top, and it said "get used to it," and I was like, I could give it. You could be male, female, trans, she-man, he-man,
You could be
whatever.
You could be Reese Witherspoon turning into romaine lettuce.
Yeah, sure. You could be, and you could be.
You would have to see A Wrinkle in Time to get that reference, and don't see A Wrinkle in Time.
Okay. Oprah 2020. So.
Don't even joke. I suffered through Bush. I suffered through Obama. I'm going to suffer through Trump. I will not suffer through Oprah.
So, you know, it just begs to be said. I don't care if you're a woman or a man. If you put a good show out there, I'll watch it. I never even knew who directed these episodes until I did a little bit of research. And not because I hated the direction in any way, but I just did not like the story that was being told. Then I found out, okay, well, you know, here's who you have to you may be able to point the finger of blame at. And I hate the fact that, does it make me a chauvinist pig that I hate a series that's created all by women?
Yes.
If you hate it because it was created by women, yes. If you hate it in spite of that fact, no.
You hate women. You hate women. Period. It's 2018.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
we've someone at some point listening to this podcast is going to refer to all three of us as these sexist, bigot, misogynistic homophobes.
Have I told you
There's
how hot?
sexist,
Have I told
bigot,
you how?
racist, homophobe.
Have I told you how
That's
hot?
what we all are.
Have I told you how hot Adrian Palicki is?
Who is that?
Really? We're doing this again?
Didn't we have this conversation already?
Yes. The exact same bit. I did this exact same bit on Tuesday.
All right. How'd it go?
You were there, asshole.
Anyway, I don't even, after coming out of this season, I really wondered if there would be a season 3.
Oh,
I
there will.
really do. And what are they going to? Well, I can tell you right now, I'm not excited for season 3 if it gets dropped. They left me with nothing to be excited about. Do I really care about Jerry? We've covered that. Do I really care about Jessica Jones and Patsy Walker and their relationship and how she's going to become Hellcat and she may possibly be a villain? I couldn't. There were points where I just didn't like, Trish, the person that played Trish. Can't remember her name. It was just too over the top for me. Oh, that's already put a bearing on what I'm going to do when season 3 drops. So it's a bottom of the barrel for me, and that's it. I'm not going to continue on. I'll turn it over to Winfrey.
Yeah, when I say this is the worst of the seasons of television that the Netflix Marvel group have produced, I mean that. I also mean that in the sense that there's some.
Are you guys really Are you guys really making the argument this is worse than the Defenders?
I wasn't counting the Defenders. Hang on, let me rethink.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
To the spreadsheet.
The Defenders was a hot pile of hot garbage.
Yeah. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow, I'll have a different answer.
There was much more excitement for me in the Defenders than there was here.
There was a hallway fight scene. That's all that movie. There was a hallway fight scene, and the four of them eating Chinese food. That's all that series was. The rest of it was endless ninja fighting.
Which Mark hates because Mark hates martial arts. We get it.
Don't hate martial arts.
Dude, there were moments...
Hang on. No. Hang on. Since you asked, let me actually think about that. I'm really not sure. I know which one I'd rather rewatch, but that doesn't necessarily make it worse. Ugh. I would have to rewatch both of them, and I'm not inclined to do either.
Okay.
I'll call it a draw for the moment, and just for the sake of argument.
Well, you're wrong. The Defenders was worse.
I'm not sure I agree with that. Again, the Defenders is certainly problematic.
Dude, it was like... The concept was kind of like mini Avengers. As in, like, we're going to bring these four characters from the Netflix show together. And that would have been... That excited me already. And then we got to see how these characters bounced off of each other.
And then midway through it went into the ditch.
Again, look, killing... God, I can't remember the actress's name now. Killing Sigourney Weaver rarely helps your series, be that television or film. And again, honestly, my biggest... I had two problems with the Defenders.
All right.
I'm not sure how that... And I'm not
I
sure
want
how
to get to the end of this podcast, so
give us at least until 11:30. We're going to figure this out. No, just kidding.
Okay, so again, since this is on me, excluding the Defenders, because I'm not sure of the solo series. All right, let me say it like that.
Okay.
Of the standalone seasons of television that Marvel has produced for Netflix, I believe this is the worst.
It's better than Daredevil Season 2.
I don't think it is.
Daredevil Season 2 was so incredibly uneven. I mean...
Yeah, sure. It was uneven, but when it was good, it was so much better than everything in this season.
Okay, 13 episodes and only 4 of them were good. That doesn't make a season good.
Those first... No.
Yeah.
You weren't on... Were you on the episode where Gavin and I talked about this or not?
Daredevil Season 2?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fairly certain I was.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain we've had this discussion about how much I hated Daredevil Season 2.
Yeah, because you hate all things martial arts. It's fine.
Ugh.
It's irrational, but it's you. So, fair enough.
Your proximity to me is making you become more like me in how you discuss things. I just want you to know that.
Sure. But
just to let you know, Winfrey, every argument that you come up with has been generated because of the way Mark acts. Just to let you know.
The first 4 episodes of that season are essentially... They're not just good, they're essentially perfect. Everything after that is uneven because when it deals with stuff involving Frank and his issues, it's pretty darn good. And when it's the inability of Matt to move on from his crazy college girlfriend, it kind of veers towards the crappy. Fair. Again, I'm not calling that... That is not the pinnacle of anything. And it was deeply uneven. Uneven's not the same as bad. I would rather take 4 exciting episodes of Jessica Jones, and there's probably 4 episodes worth of exciting content throughout these 13. Then it'd be tough. You could scrounge it up, but I would rather take 4 of that than 13 of this. And that's what probably it makes it worse than season 2 of Daredevil or Defenders, in my opinion. Again, Defenders I'd hear arguments on. I think this is worse than Iron Fist. I thought Iron Fist got an incredibly bad rap from critics. Of course, Mark and I already had that discussion.
Yeah,
and if memory serves you, that was what we both arrived at, right? Like, no, the critics are just, again, have their heads up their ass when it came to
pretty much
talking about that season.
They couldn't have gotten that one more wrong, but they couldn't get past the fact that the ninja was white.
Yeah. And Mark couldn't get past the fact that there were ninjas. Again, my biggest issue with this is not some of it's pacing, some of it's writing. some of it is... It's not even a lack of action. I don't care that there's not a whole lot of action. I can deal with that. I mean, the best episode of Daredevil Season 1 features no fighting. I'm not married to this only because there is, some kind of action set piece. There doesn't need to be. There's just not a whole lot that I found compelling. And the stuff that is compelling in this season is executed weirdly, and it's paced poorly. And the predictability thing is, for me, the predictability was less about every twist and turn the narrative takes, and more about how it's going to be done. And in the case of Season 2, it's not only predictable in the sense that it follows like every tragic trope you can imagine, it's that it does it in a very blasé, uninteresting fashion. And that's kind of my biggest gripe with this entire season, is that it just feels so meh. It feels like they had a significant number of issues they wanted to write about, and then cobbled them together in a slipshod fashion. Here's the other thing I wanted to say that I'm not quite sure. I know what I want to say here. The lack of a centralized villain in this season. From a guy who used to run for quite a while, ran a podcast called Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, I don't hate that. I do not think you need a centralized villainous character to make a show like this work. It's not necessary. But if you're going to go that route, then the conflicts that have to be dealt with are largely internal to the main character. And there's a real problem in this season in that Jessica doesn't really confront and overcome a whole lot of her own personal demons.
I don't agree with that at all.
No, let me rephrase. Then allow me to rephrase that. It's not that they don't exist. It's that the elements that should... let me give you an example then, because I'm not quite sure how I want to phrase this. She kept harping on the doctor being a bad guy. How dare he experiment on me? How dare he experiment on any of us? We couldn't possibly give consent. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, never mind the fact that you died. Let's start there. I mean, you literally would not be alive. And if your argument is, well, then I shouldn't be alive, here's a number of ways to fix that.
That's not fair. And I think then you're missing the point of her entire argument. And I don't really want to have that argument right now because we're trying to get to the
Her argument is a vague one about the nature of consent for women. It's really
but that's important, and that's valuable.
The smokescreen for this.
But again, you're dismissing something that is absolutely
I'm dismissing
crucial and
the
valuable.
context because a dead person who is then brought back to life via scientific methods, via weird science, then bitching about I couldn't consent for you to save my life after being in a massive car accident.
But this
has no moral standing.
Yeah, it does. Okay, first of all, think about the idea of like organ donors, right? You can't just harvest somebody's organs after they die unless they've expressly given written permission.
To be fair, I disagree with that.
And to be fair, it's still illegal.
It's the law. No, it's the law.
But that law stems from a moral place. Whether or not you agree with the morality of it is neither here nor there. There is a morality to doing something with one's own body even after the person has died. And I don't want to get into a religious debate about this because that's not what we're here to do. But there is a belief that even in death, your body is still your body, and you have a certain right to it, and how it is used and how it is used.
Again, if we do that, we are going to wind up in a religious debate, and my religion's better than yours, so I will win that argument.
I am one of the chosen people. You lose. Go out. Finish up.
You really don't want... Again, that is not an argument you want to have with me.
I really don't.
Jeez. Oh, man. feel like a big third Christian wheel sitting over here. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Dude, I'm Christian.
Okay,
I
all right.
don't understand why.
You Mormons
It's one of
aren't
the
really. You Mormons aren't really Christian. Where do you get
Shut
that
up.
stuff?
I cannot tell you how many times I've actually been told that by people who mean it.
You know I'm joking, right?
I do. I'm just
Okay.
telling you that's not a that's not something that doesn't happen. That happens all the time.
The Mormon and the Jew go head to head, and there's the non-denominational Christian just hanging out.
Eating
Anyway.
popcorn.
My point being that if you wanted to have that, then at some point she has to confront the reality that the Doctor isn't an evil person, and she never does. In fact, as a narrative construct for the show, they deliberately put him in a position where, yeah, sure, I'll try this again. For no discernible reason other than science ego.
Well, I think he was trying to redeem himself. You know, he felt like Mom was a failure. He feels that even though Jessica was a success, that emotionally, morally, she was a failure. I think he was looking for redemption and operating on Trish.
And again, the issue becomes, if you wanted him to be a villain, he should have just been a villain.
Again, I disagree.
If you wanted to use him as this living person to hold up a mirror to the fact that Jessica is irrational about this and overly emotional, then that's what you should do. Instead, we get this weird halfway in between thing where, no, he's kind of sympathetic, but boy, he's going to do it again, and isn't he just a big dick for doing so?
See, I thought he was fairly complex, and that's what I liked about him.
I did too. I wish they'd done more with it. That's my biggest gripe.
Well,
If you wanted to have this,
I kind of wish he'd lived, and actually, and the last thing you see is like someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. grabbing him, or have a special appearance by Ross or somebody, grabbing him and taking him taking him somewhere, considering he was essentially making super soldiers.
Yeah, again, there's a lot more that they could have done with that. I liked him, no, I can't go to jail. They won't let me go to jail. The government agencies in charge of this are going to, kidnap me and force me to do more work for them, and I am not confident in the ethical value of this. I've already stretched my ethics enough as it is, which is a valid point and a valid perspective for him to have. And then for Trish to show up and go, but you're a failure, okay, I'll do it again, undercuts all of that. If you want a show without a centralized villain, you can have an antagonist is just someone who has points that run contrary to yours. The douchebag Chang is an antagonist for much of this. She and Trish wind up at odds at various points. It's not necessary, but they wind up with this weird half measure between centralized villain and utilizing your worldview and showing you how flawed it is for character growth that they never quite committed to in terms of executing the season. And that it doesn't sit well with me because it leaves us in not a very different position from where we started. There is mild growth from Jessica in the sense that she has now driven away everyone close to her and is now trying to bond with her new landlord and his kid, who never shuts up. God, he never shuts up. But again, there's a lot of missed opportunities throughout the totality of this season, and I think that's kind of what, in addition to some of these structural errors, the fact that there was a lot of opportunity to do more, and the fact that a lot of people associated with the show showed they were capable of it in the first season. Like, if this were season 1, I'm not sure we get much of a season 2, because season 1 was really good in a lot of respects, and a lot of that strength seems to have been kind of left by the wayside for season 2 in favor of things I'm not sure. I'm not sure why.
My final thought is this, and it's going to inspire Winfrey to want to keep this conversation going for another hour in argument. But
I'll limit my response to 50 words or less.
No, you won't. But
sure,
but
I'll even count them.
I will tell you that I think the season's successful, and I think it's. Look, I'm not ashamed to admit there are things that are probably directed intentionally more towards women that I still find value in and enjoy watching, despite myself. Yeah, I like guy stuff too. Who what American man doesn't, right? But there are things that are really for a female audience that I still find a lot of value in and find a lot of entertainment, and that's where I think this show firmly lies. I think that with the all-female directing cast and the issues that the season tackled and the way it was tackled, there's an argument to be had, and you've heard a lot of it on the show tonight about maybe the execution. But I think overall they were speaking to a female audience. They were speaking to an audience largely not comic book fans, and I think that they were trying to tell a story about relationships and people that spoke to that audience. And I dug it, and I was tuned in, and I wanted to see more of it. And it definitely wasn't a comic book show. And I think for all those reasons, those who are not necessarily tuned into those sort of things might be turned away from it. And I think and I think in the argument that the three of us had tonight, you got a taste of that.
Mark's an apologist is basically what we're getting at here.
That's good. Great. Thank you, Dick. So I that's the last word I want to have on this. I don't want to beleaguer the point. So with that said, let's go into plugs. Really, really short plugs because this has been a really long show tonight. So this is the end of our 4-episode week this week. I'm Rattled and Broadcasting. I'm trying to keep to 3, but we actually had a lot of extra content this week. We threw up a Screaming Boys show because Ronnie couldn't get his shit together and Jesse had to do it for him. So if you want to hear this often talked about but before couldn't be heard episode where Jesse talks about someone shitting in an arcade, that episode of Screaming Boys
that happened all the time.
Okay. What? So that episode's up. We've got our
people who just didn't want to give up their spot, didn't want to give up their quarter to run to the bathroom. Yeah, that's not
I was a big arcade person. Never shit my pants running a bunch of times. That's happened. But boy, have I shit my pants running. Ooh, have I got stories. But never shit my pants in the arcade.
That's why you stopped running, huh?
Speaking of running, I'd like to actually get out there before tomorrow. So our source material was Jessica Jones Uncaged, which is issues 1 through 5 or 6 of the Marvel 2016 series, which I don't know if it's still ongoing. But Tuesday was our Damn You Hollywood of A Wrinkle in Time. Yesterday was our a much applauded and appreciated review of the new Ministry album, America Can't. Next week we have got Robert won't be here unfortunately, but I got Jesse and Ronnie Adams on the backup. We've got Tomb Raider Volume 1, which is going to be 5 minutes of show and an hour of gag reel. Season of the Witch. We've got a Damn You Hollywood for Tomb Raider. Our Metal Hammer of Doom coverage of Judas Priest Firepower. And then finally, Sean and I will put Lara Croft Tomb Raider Cradle of Life 2 on trial. Look also for some more Metal Hammer of Doom extras. We got a bunch of Ministry videos that we put up. Hopefully going to get some Judas Priest videos up there. And our very first one of Planet Caravan that featured a space seed ejaculating all over the universe.
We've all come from almonds.
We all come from almonds. All right, Robert Winfrey, do your plugs in 50 words or less. Go.
Saturday, in the middle of the day, I will have live coverage of UFC Fight Night 127 in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. It's a card. It's not a good card. It's really not. I'm sad. I'm sad about this card. Sunday on the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, we will review that card. And that's it for me that week, actually. Again, I will be on vacation for the movie review, and I will be back Saturday, and again, that's my big thing is the Sunday show. Then I get to not have to review Tomb Raider, which I'm not sure how I feel about. I mean, it's probably for the best. This year sucks. But I already watched everything the last 2 we've reviewed. Like, it couldn't have been worse. I'll say this about Tomb Raider. It will not be worse than Death Wish or A Wrinkle in Time, which were abjectly awful films.
Sounds promising.
Real quick, there's going to be a Screaming Boy show in the very near future dealing with the closing of Toys R Us. The rise and Screaming Boy, the rise and fall of Toys R Us. We're all going to get together and talk about it, talk about what Toys R Us meant to us, what it means that it's closing, et cetera, et cetera. So look for that in the very near future.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, go give the Rattlich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. Many a variety
Feel free
out
to
there.
throw insults at us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Please.
people they've already started. Thank you very much.
We are on Spreaker, and it is, wow, what a change. Things are people are actually interacting with us, and not in the greatest way. We don't have a whole lot of appreciation being showered upon us. So if you feel to buck that trend and want to just kind of say, hey, we enjoyed the show.
Where are you seeing this? I have not seen any of this feedback.
It's on my YouTube page.
Yeah, our Spreaker episodes go to YouTube as well. And we had a recent Metal Hammer of Doom. Our discussion on Ministries album was rather. It wasn't. Let's just say people didn't like our reaction to it.
Okay, two guys commented and were not happy that we had bad things to say about Ministry.
Don't.
No, you upset the sycophants. Good job.
So anyway, yes, we're on Spreaker.com. You can find us on just about any podcast platform out there: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. I'm sure you just type in RADULICH Rattlich in the search box. You're going to be able to find the network, rate, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and that's it. I'm ready to go to bed. It was fun discussing this season with you guys. I appreciate you bringing me on TV Party tonight to talk Jessica Jones season 2.
All right, with that said, for Robert Winfrey of the 401 Ground and Pound Radio and Damn You Hollywood, for the disapproving dad and the host of Source Material in his own right, Mr. Jesse Starcher, I am your mandated reporter, Mr. Mark Rattlich, and this has been TV Party Tonight on the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network on Spreaker.com. Be well, be safe, and be woke.